So, Be'ezras Hashem, we jump in at the bottom of Hey Amid Beis, Ois Dalid in Torah Hey. I will just go back to the beginning of that paragraph. Rebbe Nachman is telling us that in order for us to be able to produce a kol tefillah that's going into our brain with such power and force that it's actually able to awaken our heart. So the Rebbe first spoke about the problem that our heart is closed up, and we have a kamimia shebelev and timtum alev, that we're unable to feel joy. And if we can't feel joy, so then we're not going to be able to truly rejoice in the mitzvah. So if we can't do that, then we'll never get to the level, which is an extraordinarily exalted madrega, to be able to sense whether it's kodim gzardin or la'achar gzardin from the standpoint of davening, right? A kodim gzardin, you can daven straight, and la'achar gzardin, whatever this means, the tzaddikim are nislabish their tefillah in a maimer or in a maisa, as we're going to see from the very end of Torah Hey today, Be'ezras Hashem. But the Rebbe says that in order to awaken the heart, to open the heart, you need to produce a kol ra'amim. But the problem is that step one of that process is that the voice goes into the brain. And if the brain is similarly clogged up, then it's not going to work either. And the Rebbe said that clogging is the result of chametz, called it chametz, which has to do with ego, or it always has to do with a sense of independent identity, puffed up chametz, as opposed to a thin and essential matzah. There's just nothing else but what it is without anything added. And the Rebbe connected the chametz to Chochmah's chitzonius and machshavei zaros, which we interpreted yesterday as philosophies and sciences that are fortifying in a person's mind this illusion that the world is a fragmented place, and that the world is chas v'shalom a place which is self-sufficient, is functioning in and of itself, and is causing a person to turn away from the unifying energy that is within, that is within the whole of existence. This causes chametz in a person's mind. I'm not going to mamish read inside, we'll just tell you a little bit outside, and then we'll jump back in. And that's the aspect, says the Rebbe, also of yira, that's pagum. A person doesn't have yira shamayim, doesn't have that sense of awe, doesn't have that ability to approach the world with yira, oisias, re'iyah, to see, right, to really sense the presence of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, su mari menechem ru'u mi bara eila, like the pasuk says, lift your eyes on high, right, and see mi bara eila, that there's somebody who created all of this, to live with re'iyah, ru'u mi bara eila, shema Yisrael, right, as Rosh Hashanah, su mari menechem, right, because you have to lift your eyes up. And what do we do with our eyes when we say Shema? We cover our eyes. Sometimes it requires us to look away from the very convincing facade of the physical world, to be able to plug into the reality that the truth is that there's a creator to all of this. If we don't have re'iyah, we don't have yira. And for these two reasons, it's not going to work. And the Rebbe says, Amein Chochmah ein yira, Amein yira ein Chochmah. These two things are connected, because the way that we think is the way that we feel, and the way that we feel is the way that we think. And these two things influence one another. If there's no yira, there's no Chochmah. If there's no Chochmah, there's no yira. Says the tzaddik, from a yerida in our yira, which is mishtalshel from our gevura, which is the bechina of the Gemara in Sanhedrin, also Shabbos and also Zarka, there's Yored Gavriel. When there's a bechina of Gavriel, which is gevura, that's a yored, that has a yerida. Na'at kana bayam. Kana, we said, is the voice, and it was, as Jeremy pointed out, it's not the esophagus, it's the trachea, right, which brings the air up, which is absolutely accurate, right, and that's producing the voice, the kana. And that, I think, veshet, right, is the esophagus, I think. Kana and veshet, shavak yakdim kana leveshet, the Gemara in Tainus, right, that maybe the windpipe will take the food down instead of the esophagus. It's absolutely right. So, Na'atz kana bayam, but the kana that's producing the voice is na'utz bayam. It's closed up, it's planted, it's firmly rooted by yam. We said yam is yam ha'chachma. As a result and on account of the yerida of gevura, yarad Gavriel, the mela kana, that which was going to be producing a voice is na'utz bayam, na'atz kana bayam. That voice that goes into your ear from the sound of tefillah doesn't produce anything emotionally, because it gets stuck in the chametz, the big dough. It's just like a big dough that's very sticky. Just the voice goes in and it just gets swallowed up and it stays there, and it doesn't go down, and it doesn't cause the thunder that's going to bring rain, libuna demaycha, down to our heart. Says the Rebbe, what we need to do is break the leg of the ches that produces the word chametz, and we're left with the same two letters mem and sadi that we didn't touch, but the ches becomes a hey, and that turns into matzah. And that's the bechina, what we learned to the very end of yesterday's shir. Gar chayas kaneh. Gar chayas. The Zohar Kadosh says you gotta scream, gar, you have to roar and attack, essentially. The ches. What part of the ches? The kaneh of the ches. Because it's all about the kaneh. That goes back to kaneh. It's knei Chochmah, knei Binah, right? First of all, it has to do with the brain, right? Knei is a pasuk, knei Chochmah, knei Binah, but also the kaneh, which is the aspect of the voice. But over here in this context, it's talking about that little leg of the ches, the reed, so to speak, coming down from the left side of the ches. Ga'ar chayas kaneh, break the kaneh of the ches. Kaneh ches teshaber v'tasim mimene hey, and that makes the hay, and that's the inyan of chametz and matzah. So let's go a little bit weiter. We're about halfway through, a little bit more than halfway through Oz Dalid. V'zel l'shayin gar. This is what it means, gar. That the Zohar Kadosh says, what is going to break the leg of the ches and turn it into a hay to transform chametz into matzah? Gar. What's gar? Says the Rebbe Lashon Meriva. It means fighting. Fighting. Fight with the letter ches. And break that leg, turn it into a hay. Ki matzah lashon meriva, because the word matzah itself means fighting. Did tzadikaya of the matzusa b'sitra achra. Anashim nitznim, right? Fight, matzah, nitz means to fight. Can mean to battle. The tzadikim are avdin matzusa b'sitra achronin. Doesn't mean that they bake matzahs with the sitra achra. Right? In this context, it means that they fight with the sitra achra. Tzadikin avdin matzusa. They are constantly doing battle with the sitra achra, like the Gemara tells us to each and every one of us. La'olam yargiz adam yetzer tov al yetzahar. There should be roges. There should be a battle. Because they're fighting a battle. They're constantly trying to push away the shechina, that it shouldn't come close and impact the mashkana, the kedusha, and to draw those lines we learned in Torah Daled that tzaddik is called a Geulah, right? Remember, he's the boundary, because they're always placing boundaries and helping to protect the realm of kedusha. Hainu, what that means for each of us is kishetishmar es chachmascha. If a person will guard their thinking, and a person works on achieving a childlike sense of simplicity without sophistication, like we spoke about at length yesterday, and a person mamish lives with awe and wonder and radical amazement just at the fact that there is a world at all, b'chalal, and the fact that there are facts is a pella, that kind of thing, and a person mamish lives in a world that's unified, and al pi pshat was created. It's a very simple, humble calculation. You don't have to have all the proofs in the world. It's very pashut, right? The world clearly is communicating to us a wisdom that didn't happen on its own. The world is created. So a person guards their Chochmah shalayichnas by Chochmas chitzonius and protects themselves from being exposed to ways of thinking that once a person gets connected to the truth of Torah, it's absolutely irrelevant from that point of clarity. And what's the point? Shaloi tahar be'ruhurim rayim, not thinking negative thoughts. She'im bechinas kana de sitra achra, which is the aspect of the kaneh of the sitra achra, the letter ches, which is emblematic of atima, right? Because the letter ches is absolutely closed. That's what it means, right? There's a certain timtum that the letter ches embodies, because it's closed all around, except for the bottom, but it's closed, especially in relation to the letter hey, right, which produces matzah, is open. Harchiv picha. Keneged knei Chochmah knei Binah de kedusha. So that letter ches is, again, go back to the line. Not to think negative thoughts. Right, which is the aspect of the kana. That letter ches with that line is the kana of the sitra achra, which is timtum. Keneged knei Chochmah knei Binah de kedusha. That stands in contradistinction to the holy Chochmah and Binah that a person can onboard when they're connected to tzaddikim, when they're immersing themselves in a worldview that enables them to live life in a bechina of, like we learned in Torah Daled, kol ma'arosav heimlo taivasai, right? That childlike way of approaching things and recognizing everything is good, everything is sweet. Everything that happens in my life, it's not going my way, it's going his way with very little resistance, and you allow things to flow, right? Which is much more childlike as opposed to the scheming illusion of control that adults sometimes demand and insist on having. Through that, a person is spared from chametz, she'isitra demoisa, which is mamish. The Zohar Kodesh says chametz is death, chametz is heaviness, chametz is arrogance, chametz is rishayim afilu b'chayim kriyim mesim, chametz is sitra achra. Kidi isa machmetzes, this is what the Zohar says, yeast, chametz, not yeast, machmetzes, sourdough, taman, sitra demoisa. This is the side of death. V'samin, so he says a person has to come to believe, and this is also, this is also a tikkun for our sophistication. This is very, very deep. Almost incredibly deep what he's about to say.
No more sourdough.
Huh? No more sourdough? Only on Pesach. Sourdough the rest of the year could have. Only on Pesach. V'samin, kikol matzusa umeriva. We also need a little yetzahar. That's also, Kikol matzusa umeriva. Because all of the battling sheyesh bein hatzadikim hashlemim that exists between real, true, complete tzadikim, ein ze elakadesh yigarshu sitchin achranim. The whole reason that tzadikim are fighting each other, the Vilna Gaon and the Baal Shem Tov, we came to Rebbe Nachman and the Shpala Zeder of Nassan and the Sabraner, all the tzadikim had their bar plukta, but this is more than a bar plukta, especially in later generations. Mamish fighting, real fighting, but real tzadikim, mamish like real tzadikim, Says the Rebbe, it's all a ploy. It's all a strategy between them that the simple folk will never know about, and it has to be ad sof. It has to be real. It's a real play in order for the whole, the whole show to be pulled off, and in order for the audience to really enjoy it. Every actor has to play unflinchingly, uncompromisingly. They have to play their role. But it's a play. And Rebbe Nachman has many Torahs about this, both in Likutei Moharan, which we'll encounter, as well in Sichas Irad, which we've learned, and we'll continue to learn in our Tuesday series on Zoom. Rebbe Nachman spoke so much about the value of Machlokes Shebein Tzadikim, and about how there would otherwise be a kitrug from the Sitra Achra. This is just an example, one of the ways of thinking about it. And now that a tzaddik came, and the Shpala Zayda made Rebbe Nachman crazy, right? And this one made the Baal Tanya crazy, and the Geulah made the Baal Shem crazy, and so on. And there's fighting. So then the Sitra Achra says, okay, they've got it covered. They don't need me to attack. And it's mamish a strategy. And they see that somebody could be in danger because of what they're trying to bring down to the world. They opposed them, but it was Ezvayiv Basufa, was full of love. And I know that sounds dramatic if you read the history, it didn't seem like love, because it has to be ad sof. It has to be real. But the tzaddikim hashleimim know exactly what they're doing. And says the Rebbe, it's a measure of where your brain is at from the standpoint of simplicity or sophistication, the degree to which you allow yourself to be drawn in to the mischak. And the degree to which you feel, or I feel, the necessity of getting involved and mixing in the fighting, because that usually means that we're approaching it with our sophisticated, calculating brain, as opposed to the childlike, simple brain, which is what the tzaddikim say, that this is for the best and that this is good, all right, and that this battle is not actually a battle, but it's part of actually a bigger picture. And I don't understand how that's true. And every fiber of my being is telling me that cannot be true, because look and read the papers and read the news reports. But there's a certain simplicity that allows a person to say, this is beyond my pay grade. It's beyond my pay grade. I don't know anything about this. I cannot make any comment. I'm not going to get involved, like stick my head between giants, between mountains, Reb Kook and the Satmar Rebbe. It's like, this is beyond me. That's a certain simplicity to be able to say that. So says the Rebbe, this is what it means. If you want to be kaneches to shaber and turn it into the hay, so chametz becomes matzah, gar chayas kane. You have to examine your reaction to the gar, which is the matzusa and meriva bein tzadikim. because that's a good indicator. Amazing thing. It's a scary thing. V'samin, and a person needs to believe, could call matzusa umariva sheish beinat tzadikim ashleimim, that this one is a bechin of chesed, and this one's a bechin of gevura, and I understand that they somehow complement each other. The Baruch HaMeshbish is about to throw Rebbe Nachman off a balcony, as it says in Chaim Moran, and he held him and mamish killed him, or almost killed him. A person has to watch that and say, I'm staying out of it. I'm staying out of it. I understand that this is, and I can't understand it with my brain, but I believe that this is for the purpose of Sheyigarshu Sitra Achranin, that it's all a mischak in order to get rid of the Sitra Achra. V'zeh Pirish, and that's Pshat in the Pasuk in Mishlei, Oizen Sheimas Techachas Chaim B'Kerev Chachamim Talin, which literally means the ear that hears guidance for life. Techachas Chaim B'Kerev Chachamim Talin will reside among the Chachamim. Says Rebbe Nachman, Talin can mean to reside, like Lina, a place to be, to sleep, but it could also be Lashon Tuluna Umeriva, which means fighting. That when you hear reports about fighting between true tzaddikim, and you process it as a real fight, and you get all up in arms and you're ready to go to battle, and you're ready to this and that and get involved, Teda, a person should know that the only reason you're hearing this in the way that you're hearing it is it must mean that's an indicator that there's a certain degree of a lack of simplicity in my head, which is so difficult because we want to have an opinion, right? We mamish want to have an opinion. It's the one thing that everybody wants to do is to get involved in machlokas bein tzadikim. Says the Rebbe, it's the most acute indicator as to where you're at, klape tmimus. So let's go back to the pasuk. Oizen sheimas techachas chayim. If you want to know if from min hashamayim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving you a little bit musar techachas chayim, b'karev chachamim talin. That means because sheimas, you're hearing that b'karev chachamim talin, that there's tluna mariva, that there's arguments and fighting between tzaddikim. Shal zen nemar kol ba'el lo yeshuvan v'lo yasigu archas chayim. Because if a person is going down that road of poigim etipa mechacha, because the way that we think is the way that we feel, the way that we feel is the way that we act, right? Neshama, ruach, and nefesh all begins in our brain, moyach, shalit, right? Alalev. Kol ba'el lo yeshuvan. A person who enters into that experience of tipei moyach, of pagam b'tipei moyach, you're stuck. And a person won't taste the sweet path of simplicity, the life of the Tam from the story of the Chacham and the Tam, Rebbe Nachman, Sipur Maisius, Maisates, and a person will just be barred from entering into that world of magic, that world of light, that world of Yira, true Yira. Says the Rebbe, and again, you'll forgive me, I'm just translating the words. I try never to say you, say we, but the Rebbe is saying you, so I'm reading it as if he's speaking to me, but I'm just translating, but it's us, obviously. Because that means that we are stuck in the Sitra D'Maisa, in the side of death, Bechinas Chametz, the aspect of Chametz, Bechinas Yarad Gavriel, that our Yira has fallen, and that we're not living with the simplicity that we should be living with. V'teda shena'atz kana. And it means that our kana, chachmas chitzonius, which is knei Chochmah, knei Binah, and then therefore the kana, the kol, that produces the voice that enters into that doughy kind of brain, chachmas chitzonius nu'utzim b'yam chachmascha. They're stuck. They're stuck in the ocean of our sophisticated wisdom. And here the Rebbe just puts it all into a couple of lines. Ubevadai im lo yehi nifka mechacha. If your brain was a simple brain, you wouldn't hear about any fights between tzaddikim. That wouldn't be the conversation in your circle of friends. Again, I don't think it's so relevant for us, Baruch Hashem. But you have to understand the way that people live. Certain chasidus in, that's all that goes on. I could tell you, I don't want to be Mekatrik, even in Breslov. Chas v'shalom. There's a certain Beis Medrash I was learning in Eretz Yisrael, and I mamish had to leave because I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that Breslov Hasidim, that we have Rabbeinu HaKadosh and the whole Likutei Moharan and Likutei Halachos and Likutei Tfilas and all they could do the whole entire day is talk about the the fights between this one and that one, and how could that be Eichsev Shar? And these are like the real Hasidim, and I'm just like some idiot Litvak, sitting there. But tell me who's the real Chassid. What did Rebbe Nachman want? He mamish has an explicit Torah about this. You don't get involved. You don't get involved. Anybody who knows my father's Shlita, mamish, this is his inyan. He does not want to hear it. I've tried, trust me. I'm not so perfect myself. I've tried. He doesn't want to be dragged into machlekes. Period. Doesn't want to talk about it. True. It's a madrega. Tmimus. No, this kind of thing. You bring up a topic, and you heard what this one did to that. Zelo and Yan Shili. Beyond my pay grade, I don't get involved. This is what he says. You wouldn't even hear it, bichlal. It wouldn't register. You're certainly not busy with it all day. And because he says the wildest thing, and it's like a moment of realization, while you're sitting there caching with all the friends about what this one did and what that one did, maybe Eina Mariva Ela B'Shvilcha. Maybe, in a certain crazy way, the only reason that the tzaddikim are fighting in the first place is because you're still not where you're at. So it's not that there's just something happening in the world and you're reacting to it. The fact that you're in a state that you're going to react to a thing like that is the reason that they're fighting in the first place. Which is not a real fight, but it's just to get the Sitra Achar away. But you could have accomplished that yourself, and ourselves, if we could have gotten to that place. They should tashuv mimavis l'chaim, so that you should come back from the side of death to the side of life. Mechametz l'matzah, to come from chametz to live a simple life. Meches lehei, v'tashuv miyira ra'a mikol pagum mechachma paguma, right, from a negative kind of yira, because it all has to do with the inadequacy, that everybody needs to be right, and everybody needs to fight, and everybody, it all comes from that sense of yira ra'a. Mikol pagum, from a blemished voice, mechachma piguma, from a blemished way of looking at the world, and you can come liyira taiva, to see mamish, the good in the world. Right? That's what really yira taiva. You know what it means? A positive awe. Lekol taiv, to say good things. Lachachma taiva, to think good thoughts. That's this paragraph is the whole thing of Breslov. He just wants to take you out of chametz to matzah, out of yira ra, yira taiva, chachma paguma, chachma taiva. Ukishetishmars mechachma bechinas chametz shalai yeh atom. If a person will guard their mind from chametz and make sure that their brain is not closed up, but you have a free-flowing, open brain, and a person works on that. Azayivka kolcha begalgaltecha. Then when you daven gewalt, it's going to be so sweet. And the voice that you produce will mamish have an impact. It will go into your mind. It will wake up your mind. It will give you hope and feelings of longing and yearning and simplicity. And that will for sure impact your heart. And then you'll for sure feel simcha and mitzvahs. You see, it's like a chain reaction. It's like the dominoes fall one after the other. But it mamish begins up here. The Tanya says, right? Moyach shalat alalev. It starts up here. And the Rebbe is just sort of going into very, very, very fine nuanced detail as to how the process unfolds. But ultimately what it leads to is a leiv sameach. Uli yishrei leiv simcha. V'zeh perish, that's pshat in the pasuk in Tehillim, encha b'seiser ra'am, evchancha al mei meriva sala. I will answer you, b'seiser ra'am, you in hiding, or with the sort of hidden thunder, but I think it means in the hidden place. How do they translate over there? Encha b'seiser ra'am.
Test the waters of conflict.
No, that's later on. That's the second part. What's the first part? Encha b'seiser ram. I answered you. Yeah, I answered you. Encha b'seiser ram, thunderously. Okay, so I don't know what the seiser is, because it's not translated literally. But Evchancha, I tested you, Almei Meriva Sela, with the waters of strife. Says the Rebbe, it's all in this pasuk. What's the kesher between Ra'am and Mei Meriva? Says the Rebbe, it's this. Because through the Mei Meriva, through Machlekes Shebeinat Tzadikim, and our capacity to use that as an opportunity to get out of ego, chametz thinking, and into simplicity, matzah thinking, and through that ga'ar, through that matzusa meriva, chayas kaneh, you break the leg of the ches, that's chametz, and it turns into matzah, says the Rebbe. So then you clean out your brain, And then your voice is able to be produced in tefillah and go into your ears, and then it's able to bring simcha. And when it's simcha, you know how to daven. And the Rebbe doesn't say this explicitly, but I saw one of the Mefarshim. You know, because what did it all go back to? Kodim gzar din, la'achar gzar din. You know the difference of how to daven, because if it's la'achar gzar din, what are you going to need to do? Hide your tefillah in a mimer. Says the Mefarish. Beautiful. I can't remember the proper. Somebody says, beautiful. Encha b'seser. HaKadosh Baruch Hu answers a tefillah that was sent up b'seser, because it must have been after gzar din. How did he know it was after Gzar Din? Because you would need simcha to know before Gzar Din or after Gzar Din. Otherwise, you just daven straight. The fact that he davened in such a way where God answered a seser, a hidden prayer, is because of Ram, right? Is because there was thunder. How was there thunder? Unbelievable, right? So even the Rebbe doesn't say that explicitly, but it's all laced into into this pasuk. Really, the whole entire process and progression of thoughts and ideas in this Torah. You hear the Rebbe says, and I say, a person should know a person needs to always mix gevura with chesed. And this goes back really to Torah Beis. Remember, we were learning about synthesis. You have the cherev, you need to fight, not liyamin, not l'small, but be'ensa. The whole thing of the Rebbe is the Amud Seisa, is keser and tiferes and yisoid and malchus. The whole thing is synthesis. Says the Rebbe, you got to bring it together. Got to bring it together. Shativ ha'gevuras b'chasadim. There's a very, very unique and interesting tzaddik. Just say very briefly, as we have a lot to get to. There's a very, very interesting tzaddik called Rebbe Nachman, who is the chief rabbi of Tekoa. Very, 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 very exalted, very unique soul. Incredibly unique. And he used to sit and give shir barefoot so that his feet could mamish touch Eretz Yisrael. Like he wanted to mamish with his feet. Yeah, he was an ish pella, really an ish pella. And so there's a famous clip of him standing at a rally. That, you know what I'm talking about? Thousands and thousands of people. And he just wanted peace, didn't he? He just wanted peace. You know, and it was quite controversial. He was good friends with Arafat. It was a whole crazy thing. He used to go into Gaza and speak to the people. And he was an ish pella. We don't have lav kol meichas savalda. You know, not every brain could grasp. But he was an ish rachav, ish pella, heart the size of the world. And so he's standing up there at a rally. And he's giving the keynote, you know. And he stands up there, thousands of people, and he goes like this. You have to see the clip. It's so sweet. I'll try to find it and send it. He says, Chavre, Rebbe Nachman Omer, B'Torah Hey, Likutei Moharan, Shetzarech l'shatef ha'gevuras b'chasadim. You have to mix the gevuras b'chasadim. He says, At yodea ech, you know how to do that? Holds up his hands, and he just does like this. Gevuras Chasadim and Gevuras, you know, the two hands, and he's just clapping at thousands of people, and like this for like 10 minutes. That's called Tmimas Pshitas, no Chochmahs. Just take your hands and clap them, you know, right? L'shatif Gevuras v'chasadim, and just thousands of people just clapping together. Ish mashu bazeh, you know, it's very simple, but it's a way of just bringing people together. That's what people do when they get together at a sporting event, at a concert. They clap. What's the clapping? According to our from man, because that's really what he was saying, is that it's not stam, that when multitudes of people get together, they're able to clap. The clapping is itself a physical manifestation of the fact that many different kinds of people are coming together for one unified cause. That's a bechin of gevuras and chasadim. In Mela, there's clapping, because clapping is the physical representation, right, where we are all united in our appreciation for one thing, right? It's an aspect of unity, which is at the Super Bowl, right? It's an aspect of unity. Everybody's there. Mamish people who you'd never find them sitting in the same room. You know, it's like who was the singer over there, that the lady, no, on the big screen that everybody's booing, whatever, you know, she's in the same thing as Trump. I was in what world, you know? But they're both clapping for the same things. It's a pella, right? That's called gevuras b'chasadim. Okay, anyway, just an anecdote, but that's what the Rebbe says. You got to make sure to bring it all together. Smala b'yamina. You got to bring the left and the right together. What a healing Torah, for an Eretz Yisrael of today. Got to bring the left and the right together. L'shatev gevuras b'chasadim, kama shekasa b'gevurais yesha yeminai. With strength, his right hand saves. That's a very deep pasuk because you really need both. You really need both. Klal Yisrael is Tiferes Yisrael. Yisrael Shabacha Espa'er. There has to be all the different elements of Klal Yisrael. Some to the small, some to the yamin, and they all come together. Big gevurais, yesha yamina. Whatever salvation the right thinks they're bringing is only through the vessel of the left. Very deep. Ki ikar is galas ha'idei chasadim, because ultimately Geulah comes through chesed k'mashakasu shevli yamini. Hakadosh Baruch Hu says, sit by my right side ad ashes loivecha adaim l'raglecha, until I turn your enemies into your footstool. But it has to come through the right side, because that's the Geulah of Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Yamin Hashem nidar b'koyach, Yamin Hashem teratz oiv, Yamin, but teratz is gevura, but it comes through Yamin. V'chein sarach l'shatev ava ma'yira. Says Rebbe Nachman, we've been speaking a whole lot about Yira Shammai, but you have to have ava there without question. Kadeshi is avid ra'amim, so that thunder should be, and I looked it up last night, and I think it's true, that thunder even physiologically is because the heat that's caused by the lightning encounters colder wind, and it's in the shituf of gevuras b'chasadim, which is the light, heat, warmth, which is the could be both ways, but let's say in this context chesed, encountering the kriras, the coldness of the air, which is gevura. That's what causes ra'amim. On a physical level, is the shituf of gevuras b'chasadim, ava and yira, kadeshi is aved ra'amim, and then the ra'amim is able to happen, because it's always about a friction. Friction produces heat. Movement. Two things impacting each other, coming together. Yichud, betisha. Right? That's what produces life. V'zeh, and that's pshat on the pasuk, misitra di'amina moicha chivra kaspa, kekaspa. That white matter of the brain that we spoke about, the libuna d'moicha, comes from sitra di'amina. It comes from the right hand, but the right hand is chesed. You've been speaking the whole time by Yira. Says the Rebbe, yes, both. Because you cannot have real Yira Shamayim without Avos Hashem. You can't. You can't have real Avos Hashem without Yira Shamayim. These two things go together. They go together. The Baal Tanya speaks about it, right? There's a level of Ava that's Ava Tivis, and then there's Yira, and there's a higher level of Ava and a higher level of Yira, and it's like a ladder, but you have to have both. It's called the two wings, train Gatfin, the two wings that are able to lift up our lives. Vizeh, and that's Pshat, Mamish last week's Parsha. Vayashav Hayam, Lifnais Boiker, Le'esanai. That's what the pasuk says, right? The Yam return Lifnais Boiker toward the morning, Le'esanai to its strength, right? Instead of being held up, it returned to the way that it naturally is. Says the Rebbe, all of the aspects are here. What's the Yam anu Yam HaChochmah? This is a reference to the Yam HaChochmah. Lifnais Boiker, the Boiker to Avram. Boiker is always Avram Avinu, right? Which is Vayashkem Avram Baboiker. Morning is Chesed. Nighttime is Gevura, right? Bechinas Avram Ayhavi. Avraham is connected to Ava. Ava is Chesed. And so the Yam HaChochmah returned to Ava, returned in the morning, which is Ava, le'esanai, to its strength, which is Gevura. So you see that the Yam HaChochmah has both Ava, which is Boiker, and Gevura, which is le'esanai. And the Yam HaChochmah contains both. There's Ava and there's Yira. Kol Ram Chabagalgal. And that's the aspect of the Kol Ram, of that thunderous voice that's echoing within the Galgal, the Geulah d'Moicha, which is the aspect of Moicha Chivra Kaspa, which is Misitra Diamina, which is the right side. Zeu, and that's pshat also in the pasuk in SHIURIM. Mayim Rabim Lo Yuchlu Lechabes Ahava. Mighty waters, powerful waters, Lo Yuchlu Lechabes Ahava, cannot put out this love. Ki ikar is gabros al yidei ahava. That's a strange pasuk, right? Because ava you'd usually associate with gentleness, with softness, but the pasuk clearly is saying that the ava in this pasuk is so mighty that even mighty waters can't put it out, right? Can't put out that flame, right? Because the ava is with gevura, because of shavli yamini, and then it goes to speak about the destruction of enemies, which is gevura, but it's all from chesed because it's always both. V'zapirish kel hakavod hirim, the God of glory, Hirim, is mighty thundering. Kel is always chesed, because Kel is associated with Avram Avinu. Chesed Kel Kol Hayoim. The pasuk says Chesed Kel. Kel is always associated with Chesed. Kavod is the Chochmah. Kavod is the aspect of intellect, the way that we see the world. Kemashikasav of Kavod Chachamim Yinchalu. The Chachamim inherit glory because glory is connected to Chochmah. SHIURIM, again, the Bechinas Ra'amim, because it has to be with Chesed Ra'amim, but Ra'amim is Gevura. Hanu HaGevura is but Bechinas Ra'amim, Tzarech L'shatev Imahem Ava. Kel HaKavod HIURIM. The Kavod, which is the Chochmah, needs to echo with both Ava and Yira L'shatev Gevuras B'chasadim Kedei Sheyifgeu B'Kavod B'Bechinas Chochmah Sheyisaben Mehem Ra'amim, that Ra'amim should be produced v'yis Gabra Levacha K'mashikasav Shev Liyamini. And then a person will be able to overcome their enemies, which is the Sitra Achra. And then you don't have to hear Machlokes Bein HaTzadikim because you're a Tamim and a Pashut, and you keep your head in the book, and you focus on that, and you don't need to think about anything else. And because nothing else matters, because life is way too short, to get involved in this. There's so much Torah to learn, and there's so much Tefillah to say that who has time? Who has time to get involved in that? Okay, V'zeh Pirish Amar Abba Bar Chana. Here we come to the end. Rabbi Bar Chana says, one time I was going on a boat. There was such a gigantic fish, maybe the same cobra that he mentioned in Torah Daled that just destroyed 60 cities. Sounds right. A gigantic fish that it took the boat 3 days and 3 nights to travel between its fins. It had one fin in the front of the fish, one fin in the back of the fish. 3 days, 3 nights to travel between the fins. And the fish was swimming upstream, and we were going downstream. Just to give you a picture, right? Meaning the speed was mighty because it's very deep because relativity, right, is clearly going to come into play over here if a person really wants to go be right? Because there was a relative acceleration from the standpoint of the fact that the fish was moving and we were moving, and even so. And if you're going to tell me, must be that the boat was going very slowly. No, Reb Dimi came and he said, we were going, we say 60 miles an hour. They said 60 parsim a boiled pot, right? As long as it took to boil a kumkum demaya, a pot, 60 parses. 60 parses a boiled pot. That's how they were going. How fast they were going. V'shadi parsha gira v'kazma, and there was somebody standing who shot an arrow, and we came before the arrow. We were mamish going super duper quickly. V'amar of Ashi hahu gildana diyamahava. That must have been the gildana. Gildana doesn't have any good translation. Gildana, it's just the gildana. It's the secret fish. The isle treshit, so that we know it has 2 fins. What's going on over here? Very quickly, Svinta Lashon Chashiva. Svinta, we've already been learning, means prominence. And in this case, it's connected to Gevura. Dabachinas Gevura Yirkam Ashikasav Yiras Hashem Hiyai Sarai. And if you want to know where to get prominence, if you want to know where the treasure is, where wealth is, it's in Yiras Hashem. That's Chashiva. Svinta is Yira. Shu Ikra Chashiva. Shitza Lashon Sarah. Shitza means a difficult thing. I will just devour them in a moment. I will fight with them. Shitza is Meloshin Sarah. And he's giving it very briefly now, and then at the end of the paragraph he sort of explains it in greater depth, which we'll get to in a minute. 3 days, 3 nights. That's the aspect of the mitzvahs of the Torah, because they're split into 3. There are the things that are just naturally rational. There are things that we wouldn't have come to on ourselves, but have some reasons that we're going to accept it. And then there's the chukais, there's the chukim that we don't know any reason about them. Right? So tlasa, yoima, V'lel Yusa is 3, which is the mitzvahs, which are Muskalis, Mukabalis, V'chukais. Yom HaMalayla is V'gisa B'Yom HaMalayla. That's Torah. That means that we were through our yira, we were engaged with Torah and the mitzvahs in such a way of simcha, where anan b'zekifu, we were going straight up to him, which is Yismach Yisrael ba'aisav, and he was b'shipule, which is Yismach Hashem b'maisav. He was going down and we were going up. There was a mingling, so beautiful, no? There was a mingling between our smachot. Yismach Hashem b'maisav, Yismach Yisrael ba'aisav. Kemecham kumkum adamaya. You want to know how fast we were going? Like you would heat up a kumkum adamaya damoicha. He says this is the skull. The skull is a pot. that has all the water in it. What's the water? Is the Yama Chochmah. There's water up there that draws down, that filters down from Levanine, right, which is the aspect of the rain that comes after the thunder, right? That's going downward from the brain, which is the clouds, down to the heart to water the garden of our heart. Maske shitin parsas abachinas gevura. So how do we get there? Because there was gevuras. Shishim giboyrim, which we already learned in Torah Dalet, is a reference to giboyrim. Gevura is 60. Veram gevuraisav. There was a thunder of gevura. V'chishadi parsha gira. When the person shot an arrow, what's that arrow shooter? Parsha abachinas chesed. Parsha can also mean to be mafaresh, right? To expound, to explain. Shumaitzila ar talumais. This must be a reference to chesed, to ava, that you also need to put in with the gvura, with the yira, because chesed is always revealing things. And parsha means lefaresh, to expound, and that's a reference to chesed. Dvar mamtzum samim hu mefareshesam. Something that's constricted, he expounds. Gira, and the arrow, dashlachi tzechu suhumem. This is the aspect of fighting enemies, right? A war. Send your arrows to suhumem and bewilder them. Dabachina shevli yamini. This is the aspect of you need ava, and then you're able to have real gvura. Kadam leihi. And here is very, I think, uncommonly, the Rebbe adds a new element in the Rabbah Bar Bar Chana. Usually when we come to the Rabbah Bar Chana, we've already learned all the parts of the Torah. The Rebbe is just putting them in. Here the Rebbe puts in a new element, Kadma Leihi. Means, in the context, the arrow arrived before the boat. Says the Rebbe, Dabachinas Yira Shehi Koidem. But says the Rebbe, Yira Shamayim comes first. Kadma Leihi. The Yira comes first. Yira he koidem is because of Reishis Chachmas Yiras Hashem. And now he explains. Rabba Bar Bar Chana Sipar Rabba Bar Chana is telling Shalakol Kach B'midas Yira. He traveled with the Midas Hayira in such a deep way. V'Ragala Koyach Hayira, that he came to really understand the depth of the power of Yiras Shamayim. Achi Yachal Havan Hayada Ben Koidem Gzardin LaAchar Gzardin, and enabled him to reach such a level of joy in his mitzvahs that he could actually sense whether it was before Gzardin, he can daven regularly, or whether it was Achar Gzardin and Encha B'Seiser, right? Ram, right? Where he could, Encha B'Seiser, he had to put the tefillah into a mimer to hide it. V'zeu bein shitza, and this is the aspect of bein shitza l'shitza. Shitza is a tzara, and he wanted to know the difference bein shitza l'shitza, which is before the, right? Whether it's a tzara that's before the gzardin, or whether it's a tzara that's after gzardin. That's bein shitza l'shitza. And then he explains, well, how did he come to that level? Mitzvahs, it's through the mitzvah shem mechinas tchalas yomin. That's the aspect of the 3 days yachlavin, by doing mitzvahs in a way of joy. You have to do them with such joy that you don't even want any olam haba. That's the bechin of Navi, the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? Going back to the beginning of the Torah. And through that a person can come to understand God rejoices with his creatures, and that simcha goes into the mitzvahs because the mitzvahs are one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Achdas pashut im Hashem. And then we rejoice, and a person comes to the level where they don't want any reward. And again, he's just being mefarish what he said earlier. He was coming down, or rather he was going straight, coming up, because our joy was in accordance with his joy. And then through that, we're able to understand whether it's Kodim Gzardin or Achar Gzardin. Just going to go 2 minutes over time just to finish. And then he explained how he came from that to the level of thunder. It heated up the Kumkum Damaya. The Maya is cold, right? Because that's the Bechina of either Gevura, Chesed. Again, it could be interchangeable in this context, but it was Mecham Kumkum Adamaya. The lightning came and it lit up that Yira, and that caused thunder called Ramcha Bagalgal. Shitin, Zebechinas Gevuras, Hapoigim Bagalgalta, that the Gevura comes in through the ears, Kol Ma'er Kavana, into the Galgalta, the Chavanasa Mimenu Ra'amim, Vishtamakala, and that enables that voice, that sound to be heard both for yourself as well as Kol Sheyesh B'Yir Shamayim, Tavarim Nishma'im to others. Zebechinas HaKol Ma'er HaKavana. V'chinas loy nivru ra'amim ela l'fashti takmim shabalev. Hadar amar She'ikras gabras ha'gevura is ein al yidei chasadim, because it's all through chesed v'tzarech lachlala smala b'yamina, and you have to include the chesed and the gevura together. V'af al pikein tzarech la'akdama sayira, but really yira comes first. Ki bal aveda machzar al avedasai, because it says that the person who lost the lost object, he goes looking for his lost object. The lost object doesn't come looking for him. Where is that Gemara? In the beginning of Kedushin, the Gemara says that it's the way of the Ish to go looking for a wife and not the way for a Isha to go looking after the husband. The Gemara says, Darka shel Ish, lachzar achar Isha. It's the way of a man to go out and looking for the husband, for the wife. Mashallah Adam sha'avdalei aveda. It's like a person who lost something. He's taking mitzvah, right? Mamish, part of Adam. Pirish, ki ava b'chinas ish. Ava is the aspect of ish. It's the b'chin of chesed, gilui, scalus, extroversion. That's the aspect of the ish. V'yira, introversion. B'chinas isha. It's b'chin of gevura ki yadua. And that's what it means. Darkoi shel ish lachzar achar isha. Ish is avas Hashem. Ish is yiras Hashem. Ish is only achar isha, says the Rebbe. It has to come after yiras Shamayim. Then you'll feel avas Hashem because ava is constantly wherever yira is true yira, it's going to lead to tremendous ava. That's what Rebbe Nachman says. The parsha gira, right? When there's parsha is the chesed, but still Ihi, right? Kadma Ihi. Yira comes first. And we finish up. Va'amar of Ashi, Hai Gildana Diyama. This is the Gildana Diyam. What's Gildana? Says the Rebbe, an incredible Giloi. Gildana, who bechina Shem, Aleph Gimel Lamed Aleph. There's a special Shem of Hashem. Aleph Gimel Lamed Aleph. Shebechinas Gvuras. It's a Shem of Gvura. And it's Rasha Tevis. Ki Rasha Tevis, Ata Gibor La'olam Adni. So Aleph Gimel Lamed is at the Gibor La'olam, that's the Bechin of Gevura, and then the Aleph is Adni. Gildana, says the Rebbe Kamova, Gildana is the first three letters Aleph Gimel Lamed, which is at the Gibor La'olam, and then the whole Shem Adni. That's Gildana. The Shem Agla, Aleph Gimel Lamed Aleph, but the Aleph, which stands for Adni, actually has the whole word Adni, and that's the Gildana Diyam. It's a Shem of Gevura, because Ram Gevurais of Miyas Boinan, Kemecham Kumkum Adamaya. It's the gevura that goes into the skulls, the kol ma'ara kavana. Pile place, pile. Mamish, what a wonder. V'sapirish b'chatzoitzers v'kol shofar, haril l'fnei HaMelech Hashem, with trumpets and the sound of a shofar blast, you shall blow before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hainu al yedei b'chinas kol denafik. When there's kol al yedei zeh, the pasuk continues, Yiram hayam u'malaya. Yiram hayam. Yam is yam ha'chachma. Yiram is thunder. Nasa b'chinas ha'ram, b'chinas kol ram chavagalgal. Tevel v'yoshveva, says the Rebbe, which means the earth and all of its inhabitants. B'chinas liba v'ark and delay. That's the heart and all of the different parts of the heart and the ventricles and the veins. Kamay sha'amr lo nivra amim ela kedei lahavshet hakmimi yasheh b'leiv. And how does he know that the tevel is the leiv? Ki tevel, ICIs, tav, leiv. Right, tav, and then the letters that spell leiv. Tav, like we learned in Torah, Aleph Lashon Rishima means to carve. Kamesh because of his visa tav. Shenir shama kol b'leiv. That through this, through bechat soisus for kol shofar, the kol shofar is the bechin of gevura. Hariu lifnei HaMelech Hashem. Yiram hayam umalaya. Tevel v'yoshveva. Tevel is tav leiv. That voice will be able to go down into the heart. Lahavshet hakmim shebalev ulu yisrael leiv simcha v'ayidei zeh nahar simcha uchav. And what does that lead to? Clapping. Mamish, I didn't even realize. Mamish clapping. B'chinas simcha, which is joy. When we're joyous, we clap because it's thunder. They Mamish even say in English, thunderous applause. Right? It's even a way that they say, thunderous applause. Thunder. B'chinas simcha, liyishra leiv simcha, yidei zeh simcha, yachad harim yiranenu. Rina's lashon tefila. Kema shekasav l'shmaya ala rina ve'ala tefila. Harim is the b'china of tzadikim, right? The high mountains. Esa'ein ala harim. Hainu al yidei simchas halev. Yichaylen le'spalel. Ulahalbish es ha-tefila b'maimer. And you can put the tefila into a maimer. Encha b'seiser ram. Kishiyavinu kinigzar adin. V'zeh perish yachad. Yachad harim yiranenu. Harim is the tzadikim. Yiranenu, they daven yachad in such a way where they're putting the tefillah, shemal bushim tefilasam, b'sipurim yachad. And they're putting it into a story. Hadran alach, tarehei v'hadrachala. You understand that you can spend the rest of your life on this page? You understand? There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages written in Pirish on this. Ashreinu matay chalkeinu. Chaver, thank you so much for being here. Everybody who's watching this, everybody who's on the call. Mamish Ashreinu. And I just want to make a tiny announcement. As you see, tomorrow we're starting Torah Vav, and then there's a break for a couple of days, and people have an opportunity to do Chazara on previous SHIURIM. Please, if you can, make a very strong push. If you could think in your head, and your kumkum, and your head, if there's any groups that you feel would benefit from knowing about our chabura, if there's any local chaver here that you want to invite, now's the time to do it. We're literally starting. It's not even like Daf Yomi or like Nabuch, coming in the middle. People don't learn Likutei Moharan like this. You just come, we're starting Torah Vav, You can come
מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני